One of the things that I learned as one of my biggest mistakes that, of course, I've heard other coaches say is don't create the thing until you have a paid client. And I have shown them the actual courses. I'm like, this is the thing I built that I spent hours building, and then no one bought it. Versus I have this program that I knew I had the content for. And it wasn't until I had the paid client that then you build it out. And then in many cases, it's week over week, right? And then you realize you don't even really need all of the beautiful worksheets and all this stuff. It's more about just showing up in the moment. And then the same thing translates over to speaking is sometimes people are like, I need to write this perfect keynote. And then they're like, well, now where do I take it? And so I think, how do you get yourself on stage as quick as possible? And that's sometimes just starting with a video on social media. And when you start doing the thing, then it just changes the feeling of urgency inside us. And then the trust we can grow knowing that we have so much to share.
Well, hello, and welcome back to the Amanda Kaufman Show. We're continuing our series on coaches that don't suck. And I was just telling my friend Megan McCaleb that I am so excited that she's here because she definitely doesn't suck. So there's criteria number one, but also she's just so dedicated to doing a really amazing job for her clients, helping them build their keynotes and show up confidently as a speaker. So Megan, hey, welcome to the show.
Hey, thanks for having me. Super stoked to be here, Amanda.
Yeah. I've been looking forward to this. So take 30 seconds and why don't you, in your own words, let our listeners know exactly what it is that you do.
Cool. Well, I'm a speaker coach, and it actually kind of all began as being a comedian. I've been a comedian, improv, and stand-up for over 15 years and did that as a hobby while I worked in corporate. And then I saw all the fun parallels of how comedy is so connecting and really great for getting through like hard conversations and hard topics. And so it's evolved to where I just help people find their variety of humor and understand why sometimes their most challenging stories or situations actually become a superpower, especially as a coach. They're going to be able to help people see what transformation is possible. And it just really taps into vulnerability in a fun, approachable way.
I love this, because I like to use humor. If I was to, it's so awkward talking about your own humor style, isn't it? But, it's like, I'm funny because it's like, But I am funny because I like puns. I like kind of double meanings. And I like to get very hyperbolic when I'm sharing things. And what I've found in terms of using humor in my coaching, especially, is that you can say things in a humor context that if you just said that like super straight to the person, it might be, just too much for them to take. But if you're able to like make it jovial and funny in the right context, you can actually say things that you would never be able to say with a straight face.
Oh, yeah. Well, and the magic of comedy too, and there's obviously, I don't know, actually, maybe it's not obvious to your listeners, there's a little bit of a difference between improv comedy and stand-up comedy. And so I like to merge like the things that you get from each of them. For example, in stand-up, you have self-deprecation. So it's something where it actually heightens the accountability factor and the self-awareness. And so that's what makes it so you can say things that are a little bit more challenging because it's not coming across, if you're doing it right and with good intention, it's not coming across as a mean-spirited thing. It really helps connect and show like, look at how much we actually have in common, even when there's like, sometimes we do need to kind of course correct, and it just makes it so much more pleasant for sure.
Love that. Like the self-deprecating humor can be very effective. I've also seen it overdone. So like, what would you say if somebody's wanting to like play with humor? An example that's coming to my mind right now is actually earlier this week, I was hosting a live stream and I dual cast. So I broadcast to Instagram and I broadcast to all the other channels. And after half an hour of just bringing it with all the fire, I realized that I was on mute on every channel except for Instagram.
Oh, no.
And afterwards, I was just like, oh my goodness, like what a move. How many of these lives have I done and I had no problem whatsoever. And then I did this one. Well, I turned around and I made a story on Instagram laughing about it. And I was like, you guys, and like the whole punchline was the self-deprecation of like,
Yeah.
that mistake. And then I was like, this girl needs a checklist. And I was like pointing at the wall of where I was going to put it. And no kidding, I got literally 10 times the number of inbound messages that I would get if I was like directly putting into the stories like, hey, get this free thingy from me. Like, so, that's just kind of a little example, but
yeah,
I think you can go too far with self-deprecation. So I'd love to pick your brain in front of everybody on
yeah.
your thoughts on this.
For sure. Well, exactly what you said. That's a perfect example because especially I think where our area of expertise lies is where we're going to get constant opportunities to grow and fail and see how we
You
show
were going
up.
to say something else.
I'm really good at catching, right? So I think it's what keeps us sharp. And so the acknowledgement, the quick ability to acknowledge just makes it so it eases the discomfort of whoever saw it. And they're like, oh my gosh, does she know? Like, is there something that she's like, whatever. It makes everybody uncomfortable until the thing is acknowledged. Where people take it too far, I think actually probably because I read so many personal development books that when you take it too far, it actually makes people uncomfortable because it's like, you're spending too much time on it. It feels like super extreme, or it really starts getting into a negative energy that just doesn't feel good. And so self-deprecation, especially with like mindset, and we need to be speaking kind words to ourselves. Like I have to find a good balance there because it can go too far in a lot of different ways where it actually starts offending other people. It derails from the original point. And it just carries a little bit of a less desirable energy. So kind of finding that balance of when do you get to activate it so that it can realign with wherever we're heading and show you're human. Like that's the best part is then people go, oh, good. So she's not perfect. And then that actually, like you said, getting way more interaction on it. That's what is like magnetic is that real human moment and not staying stuck in it too.
Yeah, I love that, and I love your approach with it too because it's very organic. Like something that I was thinking about too is we talk all the time about authenticity in marketing and representing exactly who we are, etc. And I know that there's a lot of staged content for sure on social media where, oh no, what happens next? And it's like the staged mistake. And what I found is that number one, it's staged. So like you can just sort of feel the inauthenticity of the quote unquote mistake. And that content can actually be viral, it can go really, really far. What I've found personally, and just I think I'm echoing what you're saying, is like when you have your own experience and you make your own mistake, a kind of a running joke that I have inside my internal team is like, today I learned, and then I would share like the flub, the mistake, the issue. And, what I try to do, and I don't know if you have any thoughts on this, but what I try to do is when I admit the mistake, I also share what's the reparation, like, did I forgive myself? Sometimes it's just like I did something that embarrassed me, or did I like make a techie mishap? Because that happens. What I do to fix it. I try to like drop the joke or the embarrassing moment, but then pretty quickly afterwards come up with a resolution.
Oh yeah, for sure. I mean, one of the things that you said actually comes up a lot in my speaker coaching space around authenticity and vulnerability. Like those two are so hot. They're so hot right now. And hopefully
like
forevermore. So and people are like, I almost can't stand the focus on the super staged clicky bait things that are not really genuine because those don't really necessarily lead to quality leads. And so a thing that a lot of coaches will get stuck on is they feel like if they don't have this huge audience that maybe they shouldn't be speaking yet or that it's not being as effective. And really,
or that they're boring.
Yeah, right. Yeah. The more they can focus on who they are as an individual, though, the more quickly they're going to magnetize the right people, as you know. And so like, I don't have a giant following really yet on any specific platform, I have a pretty engaged audience though, because I've just always nurtured things and I learned to be pretty vulnerable early by accident. And it just, there's just so much value in it. Like really just dropping the guard and not trying to over cook the joke, I guess, like you said, of something quick to acknowledge and get a little bit of a chuckle and that quick relief. And then there needs to be something tangible. There, like, what is next? And yeah, I don't know.
Yeah.
And we're telling people that they need to be vulnerable and authentic, although we're not really telling them how. And that is the thing that a lot of leaders and coaches are getting stuck in is like, well, how? Because we're so inundated with what other people are doing. I'm like, well, don't be that if you're not that, you know? I don't know. I feel like
and I think even like your comment about my audience isn't all that big. It's like the first coachy thought that came to my brain was like, well, compared to what though? I mean, you know, compared to when you started, you're probably huge.
maybe I'm more intentional now. You know, my goals, my 10x version of me is to have hundreds of thousands of followers or maybe millions someday. And yet I have also had $90,000 months with 2,000 followers, you know, on Instagram. You know, I have all the different platforms that have their different purpose, but the key is like people are drawn in because my true story that I mix with my teaching element is pretty heavy. It's an adoption related story. And then people like when we tap into our stories, then we realize, oh, that's what's actually driving us. Hopefully, like I think the best coaches are the people who are really willing to share the actual hard stories. They're not just giving hypotheticals. They're not like only talking about case studies and stuff. They're like up in front saying, these are things I've gone through on a personal and a business level, and that's why I teach XYZ. To me, that's that's the secret recipe that helps my coaches like really start to stand out as a speaker and a thought leader. Like that's what we all want to be as a coach is we want them to think of that topic and go, oh, Megan teaches that.
Right. And like relating and connecting. I think one of the biggest surprises, and looking back, I'm like, why was I surprised by this? But it was a big surprise, was just how people-y you kind of have to be if you want to be a successful coach. And, you know, when I started, I was like so introverted. And I was funny, but it was funny with like my super close inner circle. And I'm one of those like ridiculously loyal friends that if it's like, if we're bonding, if we're here, if we're doing, and you know this, Megan, like we've had situations where it's like, I probably didn't need to continue, but I did because I wanted to in like forming relationships with people, even though I had all the reasons in the world to be like, well, this has been fun, goodbye, right? And I feel like a lot of people when they're building audiences, and just like true confessions, because this is the podcast. I mean, you came in and you're listening here, you're reading more than a social post here. When my business has gone wrong, it's been when you know, that marketing engine and getting the advice from everybody. And it just like diluted the level of connection that I was really feeling because I was losing the messaging. I was losing the interactivity, you know, because what I was supposed to be doing at the time was I was supposed to be, I was supposed to be scaling with ads. I was supposed to be scaling with sales team. And I think that it will, you know, work, but it didn't work in the way that I was approaching it because there was too many instances where the message was kind of getting into a copy paste place of somebody else. And not enough instances of like that authentic and loyal connection, you know?
Ugh. I'm just thinking about on both sides of things of times where I have actually been coached. I've invested in lots of coaching over the years. And the times where it was so frustrating when things were out of alignment when I got in there and it's not what you're being told you're having delivered. And almost like, I don't like when coaches are coaching on things that they haven't already done and you can sniff it out pretty quick. So there's a lot of things, and I don't want to go down like a negative hole too far. And I also think that's really important to be really authentic is like one of the things that my clients actively tell me they love the most is just how honest I am. Like when I don't know the answer, I'm so honest. And I show them exactly how far I am down the road with different parts of the program or deliverables. And I speak to like, these are the things that worked for me, and then give all those different caveats of like what might be relevant. Like I really want people to be empowered to choose and cherry pick while seeing that complete. I don't know if I'm like too open, because I'm like, here, let me just show you everything that I failed with. Like
Totally. Yeah. I have a very similar philosophy. And what I was thinking about as you were talking about this is I'm like, gosh, how much of our authenticity gets discovered in those moments where it's tempting to not be as authentic, or in those moments where we like do the thing and we think that it was authentic, and then we actually look at it and we're like, I can actually do better here. Like I can be even more open. I can be even more like, and for me, I know that I get caught sometimes in like the ideals of people pleasing, right? Of wanting people to be happy and to be pleased with having interaction. But that very tendency can cause me to maybe not emphasize the points that I would emphasize if I wasn't so worried about pleasing you. You know what I'm saying?
Oh my gosh, absolutely. And the other part of that, this is interesting, it almost piggybacks off of a coaching call I had yesterday, where I realized too, as a coach, we can only do so much too, and we can't want the thing more for our client than they want for themselves.
That is so frustratingly true.
Yeah, and so I don't know. Yeah, there's like a lot of things swirling in my mind now, just even thinking of ju- just where our energy should go to be the most authentic in the moment. And a lot of times too, and I don't know exactly how far down the road some of your clients are, like if they've been coaching for a long time, or if some of them are newbies,
Some
or
have been
both.
doing this for 30 years. Some people are just getting started. Like they
Yeah,
have kind
okay,
of
cool.
adjacent experience, from their corporate job. Yeah, there's like a good
Yeah.
range here.
Yeah, that's actually one that really, I spent a season of my coaching with people that were leaving corporate and starting their own coaching or their consultancy. And one of the things that I learned as one of my biggest mistakes, that of course I've heard other coaches say, is don't create the thing until you have a paid client. And I have shown them the actual courses. I'm like, this is the thing I built that I spent hours building, and then no one bought it. Versus
Yeah.
I have this program that I knew I had the content for. And it wasn't until I had the paid client that then you build it out. And then in many cases, it's week over week, right? And then you realize you don't even really need all of the beautiful worksheets and all this stuff. It's more about just showing up in the moment. And then the same thing translates over to speaking. Is sometimes people are like, I need to write this perfect keynote. And then they're like, well, now where do I take it? And so I like think, how do you get yourself on stage as quick as possible? And that's sometimes just starting with a video on social media. And when you start doing the thing, then it just changes the feeling of urgency inside us, and then the trust we can grow, knowing that we have so much to share.
Megan, oh my gosh, I need to have you back. Like we need to spend more time like unpacking, because we barely scratched the surface on the speaking side of what you do and everything. And like, we must,
Yeah,
not to put you on the spot like live.
no, I love it.
But Megan, what is the best way for people? Wait, before I do that, I just got to ask really, really quick.
Yeah.
What are the 3 biggest things that you think help a coach not to suck?
Okay. To not try to copycat other coaches. So just in theme of our authenticity and vulnerability, not to overthink it. If they're feeling pulled to do the thing, it's probably correct. I read in a book.
Yes, honor that intuition. I love
Yeah.
it.
I read in the book Happy Pocket Full of Money that says, don't discount what feels like a random thought, because your thoughts are the answer to someone else's prayer. So trust that. And then the third thing, to make them not suck, is to just be honest. Like, don't pretend you are something you're not yet, because that just gives the whole community a bad rap. So be honest about where you are, because you could still help people that are not where you are yet. And then it's a lot more in alignment when you just are really true about where you are in the journey and get people to where you're at. And that'll help you grow quicker too.
I love that. I love that so much. Okay, now, Megan, what is the best way for people to catch up with you?
I love Instagram. I'm at Kooky Megan, KOOKYMEGAN. And then I'm actually a big fan of LinkedIn these days. So if you have that to drop somewhere in there,
Yeah, I'll put it in the show notes.
I'm really loving LinkedIn these days. It's very interesting.
Me too. I'm meeting some really cool people through that platform, and they're serious, but like not too serious.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's pretty good. I love it.
Yeah.
Cool. Well, Megan, thank you so much for joining us, and we'll make sure to include like all the ways that you can get to know Megan even better in the show notes. And subscriber, go ahead or listener, go ahead and subscribe and go ahead and give this episode 5 stars in a review, because Megan just showed up. She was just so in her space. It was awesome. She definitely deserves a 5 for that. And that'll help other people to find the episode, by the way. And you know what? You can make it even easier for your friends to find the episode if you just share it with them. So if you've got 3 friends who are looking to do more speaking, they're looking to have more authenticity in their personal brand, they can't miss this episode. So don't do that to them. Go ahead and share it. I'll be back with another episode very shortly. Thank you so much for being here, and we'll see you next time.
Hey.